We interrupt your regular schedule of Time Warp Radio to present a specially broadcasted bonus episode. This episode, we are discussing our most recent movie minutes with Jim O'Kane, a host and producer of the Movie by Minute podcasts for The Rocketeer, Apollo 13, Andromeda, as well as the Hitchcock Minute and Die Hard Minute series. Jim, thanks so much for talking with us today.
Thanks. It's been a lot of fun. It's either a lot of fun or a remarkable waste of time, but hopefully that's the
Well, are these your favorite movies, would you say?
Yeah, I think they are. I mean, I've mostly been doing the movies I enjoy, and some of them are older movies. It's a variety of films. There's comedies, there's dramas, action, adventure. And I try to find ones. I mean, a lot of the more recent popular ones are kind of already taken, and I didn't want to step on anybody's toes. But I know these other movies, and I just enjoyed. The great thing about this format is it's a perfect excuse to go look up, your heroes, the people that made the movies, that acted in the movies.
Absolutely.
And it's just a perfect excuse, and you call somebody up and say, "Hey, would you like to be on my show?" Especially if you tell that to an actor, they're like, okay, sure. So,
yeah, we were absolutely shocked when we started our podcast. We were looking through like the database for Movie by Minute and everything, and we were totally in shock that nobody had done Rocky Horror yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems obvious, right?
Yeah, totally.
Because the cult legacy kind of writes itself, and I have lots of questions for you on what you might think the ultimate meaning of the movie might be, but we'll get to that in a second.
Sure, no problem.
Since you produced the Hitchcock Minute podcast, you recently completed the North by Northwest film. Do you have plans for what's the next Hitchcock film you're thinking of?
It's gonna be a while, but I'm hoping the next one is going to be Shadow of a Doubt. That's one of my favorite Hitchcock films, and Joseph Cotten and Teresa Wright, and who is Uncle Charlie, a good guy or a really really bad guy? So it's a great scary. It's all very pleasant until you like Hitchcock does. He's just a little bit under the under the covers there. You find out that the world's pretty seedy. So I enjoy that movie a lot, and I think. Talking about it, people when they think of Hitchcock, they usually think of like Psycho or North by Northwest, which was an easy lift. But I think going back to the older part of his catalog, there's some really thrilling ones back there, and I'd like to just examine them a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely.
It's great with those directors that are so classic, like their masterpieces are masterpieces because they had 2 or 3 or 4 films before that where they were really getting their artistic eye and perspective. Like, this is totally changing directors, but I just recently watched a Dario Argento film, one of his earlier ones, after being a fan of Suspiria for a few years.
Yeah.
And it was so beautiful, and the framing was so wonderful, and I could see how he was already starting to learn how he built his color schemes, how he would tell stories with packing the frame with individual little character traits or props or things like that Hitchcock was also famous for doing. Like taking advantage of the entire screen. And yeah, I think Shadow of a Doubt would be incredible to talk about. You mentioned Psycho, so if you ever decide to do that one, sign Katie and I up. We would love to discuss.
Yeah, we actually drew some parallels between Psycho and Rocky Horror Picture Show. We've started playing this game where anytime we watch a movie, any movie, we point out the things that are Rocky Horror about that movie.
We have a new theory that every movie is Rocky Horror.
Yes.
Okay, I can see that. Yes, easily. At least only starting with the RKO pictures, I would say.
Yes. Oh,
wow,
yes.
it's Rocky. Yeah, so King Kong. There you go.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
And specifically, we've kind of gotten this new theory on the Transylvanians and all of the taxidermy birds that they keep around the castle, which, you know, birds in Psycho, Hitchcock was using these animals as a device for surveillance and a sense of foreboding, and like a big brother is watching over you and stalking its prey, kind of. And we totally, when we saw that in the movie, we were like, why are there taxidermy birds on the mantle and on a banquet table? And
there are literally taxidermy birds all over the entire castle, and we were like, this is absolutely so Hitchcock.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And you know, and birds also being a sign of guilt, a sign of a past transgression. I mean, if you think about literally the name of the title of the birds, Tippi Hedren's character is being followed by birds for her indiscretions in life.
Yes.
And you know, you think about the taxidermy birds, like as you're saying, they're scattered all over Frankenfurter's house, where you have a you know, someone who was put in suspended animation and then murdered. That's, you know, there's enough sin to go around with that one. So
yeah,
yeah, that's a great observation on this movie.
Oh, well, thanks. Just, you know, trying to draw any parallels possible, because a callback that's famous at the end of the movie is that the movie lacks meaning. And so we're just trying to look for meaning in any shape or form. And it's kind of led us to some crazy
conclusions and conspiracy theories. Yeah, totally.
But do you think, I guess this is kind of coming from your vast knowledge of movie,
oh dear,
like cinema, just that's compiled in your brain, you know? Jim Sharman as the director, do you think he was inspired by Hitchcock at all, or do you think there were any other directors that he was inspired or influenced by that maybe the taxidermy birds all over the house is not so wild a claim to make?
Oh no, certainly. I mean, Jim Sharman and Richard O'Brien, they worked on this script, and I think they lay it out in the opening song, showing you the amount of science fiction and horror movies that overlapped each other. You know, they grew up with it. They were basically marinated in this whole idea of science fiction and understanding things like, you know, horrible monsters being created. The story is a Frankenstein story, and you know, building Rocky instead of building the creature in the 1931 Frankenstein, or Mary Shelley's Frankenstein,
right,
more specifically. You know, it has all those elements that you're seeing, and then it turns out, you know, they take that 30s theme of building Frankenstein's monster, but then it turns into a 50s theme that they're all actually from transsexual, and they're aliens, and they're all dressed up like Flash Gordon characters with the quilted uniforms and things like that. And you have, so it's this overlap from the 30s into the 50s. So they take the classic, the Universal monsters type of idea, and then they move it up to that 1950s paranoia of we're being invaded by pod people. You know, these are people that they seem normal during the daytime, but as night falls, we find out there's this whole other thing going on, and they're kidnapping people and using them for who knows what.
Yeah, I had never thought of that before, because it's also, they look like us. So there's that whole, you know,
they're among us.
Yeah.
We don't know who they are.
We can't trust our neighbors. We don't know if our neighbor in Denton, Ohio is from the United States or from the planet Earth, or if they're from a visiting galaxy.
Yeah, no, we think it's the home of happiness, but it certainly isn't. This is a very, very, very unhappy people who just want to go back home.
Yes.
Yes. And unhappy people all around, I would argue, probably. Like, well, or not. Maybe Brad and Janet end up in the same limbo of happiness, both at the beginning and the end. You know, like, I don't know if they're better off after going on this strange journey, but I don't think they were happy to begin with.
No, and we find, I mean, I don't know if you feel that the sequel is canon, but Shock Treatment showed us that they did not live happily ever after, that they had miserable lives going into the future.
It's so funny that you mentioned Shock Treatment, because Haley's actually never watched Shock Treatment.
I was at the U.S. premiere in Austin back in 1982, and Richard O'Brien was there, and he was just out of range for me to. I wanted to get an autograph.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. What was he like though when you saw him? Like was there an aura about him? Like, what was he wearing?
He was wearing a I want to say it was like what do they call it? A deconstructed tuxedo. It looked like he had on a white shirt and a black jacket, but I think the jacket was like
not a motorcycle jacket, but like a members only 80s jacket.
And the problem was, it was, oh gosh, it was a bitter cold night in Austin, and it was at the Riverside Theater, and which was just down the block from my apartment. I was like, I was reading, I was like, wait a minute, this is the sequel? So I ran down, and they were giving away one sheets to it. I have somewhere in my garage, I have a one sheet that's Shock Treatment for this. But I was like, oh, I've got to get into the sun. And it was like, there was just too much of a crowd around. And we all went in and watched the movie. And it was like, oh gosh, they really, I wanted to like the movie, but it was just too.
I like the theme music. The music was okay.
I love the music.
That's like the consensus among most people, is that like the Richard O'Brien gained a ton of skill in writing Rocky Horror, and then was prepared to write Shock Treatment, and the songs are like incredible.
The problem was the story wasn't strong enough. I thought the story could have been a lot stronger.
It was a lot like, there was a movie at the same time called Americathon, and it was written by the same team that did Mary Hartman, and Americathon came out, and it's basically the same thing. It was this show that was like, you live in TV. I mean, UHF is pretty much the same thing. It's like you live in a TV, and it was a disappointment. But the problem is when you come up with a classic. Orson Welles fell in the same problem with making Citizen Kane. How do you come up with a Magnificent Ambersons and The Third Man? How do you top that? So they were kind of in a bind to come out. It's 1981, and you think, wow, this has been a great success. We're showing it every weekend, but and then they built the movie
to be, here's where you insert your callback. Here's where here's what you're going to yell back at the screen, and you can't build something like that. It's lightning in a bottle.
Mm-hmm. Right. It has to be more organic than that.
Yeah.
Because he didn't write it with pauses initially. That's just the delivery of the lines. Yep. And I would say, if anything, the movie has lost meaning over the last 25 years because of callbacks. And
it's gotten a little nonsense.
And the callbacks have changed over time, and where you're seeing it with what the locale is. There's things that there's things when I went back in the 70s when you went to it, and I saw it. I saw it in the Village. I worked at a theater where we showed it every Friday and Saturday night. And the callbacks wouldn't make any sense nowadays because they were all topical.
Right.
It's a lot similar to the movie Airplane. If you see the movie Airplane,
oh, so good.
There's so much stuff in there, but it's stuff from 1980. So if you don't know, like the guy that's at the beginning that gets stuck in the taxi cab, that's Howard Jarvis, who created Proposition 13.
Oh, that's so funny.
So,
no
idea. If you don't know that, like it's
funny that he's stuck with the bill, and he's the one that came up with Prop 13. Back then it was topical, but now it's like,
who was that guy? Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh, poor guy got stuck in a taxi with a really high bill.
Yeah.
So it's and it's the jokes that were funny. Like when the movie came out, I'm an old guy, so I remember, like when the movie came out and you're watching it, and it's the night of August 9th, 1974, and Nixon is resigning on the radio while they're driving up to the Frankenstein place. And like that was recent history to me, to the audience that was seeing it. So it's like, oh, I get this. They're listening to something of recent history that you'd hear on the radio. So hearing that, it was like everybody knew what that was. But nowadays you need like captions and by the way, here's a trivia bit that that this is happening.
Yeah.
Well, so
we actually came up with a theory on why Brad is listening to that speech, because Krim says it's a November evening.
And it's like 2 months after the fact, and
right.
Richard O'Brien has made a claim to kind of explain away the continuity error as
really?
Brad just being obsessed with Nixon's speech, and he just needed to hear it and study it, and he loved his delivery. So our theory was that Brad was studying the speech to figure out how to break up with Janet. And
okay. Wow.
Like in case it needed to happen, he was like, well, Nixon just broke up with America, so like if I have to break up with Janet, I should probably do it in a similar way.
Yeah, the quote that they have from that speech is like, America, like, you really need a good guy, and like I'm usually a good guy, but I just can't be a good guy for you right now.
Obviously, we're paraphrasing, but...
So he had it on like an 8-track that he was playing in his car.
Yes.
Totally.
Okay. Yes. So that's our
Interesting.
current theory on why he may have been obsessing over a resignation speech.
From like 3 months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Because Richard O'Brien was really upset that it dated that scene and that it put it at the Nixon administration, and it didn't become as timeless of a film as he would want it to.
Yeah, it could have been from any time if they hadn't had that little nugget. But as you said, if there's a way to explain it, that he's listening to a taped version of it. Wow. Okay, I had not heard that theory. That's fantastic.
Again, finding meaning in anything.
A lot of our Rocky Horror friends are like, this movie's been done to death. All of us know all of the weird little fun facts that everybody knows. We all know that there's nothing new you can say about this movie, and we're like, test us. Watch us go. We will wildly theorize.
Yeah, the latest one we've got. So, okay, where we're at in the film thus far, we've just seen Frank make a man, and we've had all of the Transylvanians up in the laboratory without any doors in the lab.
Okay.
We don't see them travel there. We don't have any kind of explanation how quickly they get up there when we see Brad and Janet take the only elevator upstairs. So our current theory is that Transylvanians are shapeshifters.
Ooh.
And that they can like teleport through walls.
Okay.
There's another explanation in addition to the fact that they get into the lab without a door, which is that one of the Transylvanians, Henry Wolfe, is replaced during filming because he had another obligation. But instead of just keeping the replacement guy in the background, they actually put him in like right up front in plain view of the camera.
Shots. And
wow.
He looks similar enough that you're like, yeah, that's the guy that I saw earlier. But when you become familiar with it and you kind of ask yourself, okay, like there are 20 other people in the room they could have put front and center. Like, why are they showcasing that they recast this one extra, you know?
And it's because they're
the second Darren in Bewitched, yeah. Wow.
But I know you had a lot of knowledge around Charles Atlas.
Well, I grew up in the era when
Charles Atlas was still a thing, when he was still alive, and he was in every comic book.
basically the idea of being a 90. The whole story behind Charles Atlas was you were the classic 98-pound weakling on the beach getting sand kicked in your face and losing the girl, and if you only had enough muscles, you could have had the girl would have really been interested in you if you had enough muscles.
Yeah, if you could beat the bully.
Yeah.
So I remember gosh, I remember when he died. I was like 11 or 12 years old, and all these people had come on the news saying, Charles Atlas made me who I am today, and there were all these like
bodybuilders and stuff.
So he made many a man.
Many a man. He was a hero to 98 pounds. I have to admit, I was a 98-pound weakling. I was 6'3" and weighed like 120 pounds. So I felt for the guy. It never worked for me. I didn't use his program, but what he used is what the dynamic tension is another word for isometric exercises, where you push your hands against each other to build up your forearms. You basically you use yourself as your own weightlifting equipment. Yeah.
So he did a lot of what he called dynamic tension, which is in the song, but that's what it was. I mean, he was a real everybody. Before Schwarzenegger, it was Charles Atlas.
Right.
He had to be built like Charles Atlas, and the guy gosh, every picture you see of him, he's got that big barrel chest. And
Yeah.
Just it's kind of scary looking.
Like, you think he's CGI'd, and then you remember this is a time before computers.
Yeah.
You're looking at a photo that's just an authentic guy that built his body to look that way. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and pretty much the only thing that he ever built up using dynamic tension was
it was always arm day. It was never leg day. So you'd see these guys with skinny legs, but they'd have these big biceps.
Yes.
And it's like
all from pulling, just making their hands like railroad couplers and pulling against them and pushing against them
hours at a time. And
I knew kids that believed in this stuff, and they didn't get any bigger from it. But it was like, I want to be like Charles Atlas. So gosh.
Sorry, a lot of memories about this.
Yeah. Well, so you were talking about Charles Atlas passing away, and that kind of led into another theory that we've recently planted our stake in, which is that Rocky might be the exhumed corpse of Charles Atlas.
Because Charles Atlas,
for a couple of years.
Yeah, he died in 1972, and the stage show happened in 1974. So if Frank has the scientific ability to bring someone back to life, could it also be inferred that he could maybe Benjamin Button someone?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And if, so in the, creation scene, Rocky's in the tank, we see flashes of a skeleton underneath his bandage wrap, which, it makes me think that he doesn't even need skin, maybe, to reanimate a corpse into, paint mixer, dispense the chemicals needed to make skin and muscle and tissue and stuff, and that he just needed the literal skeleton of Charles Atlas to literally make a man.
Wow.
That's our newest theory.
Wow. Yeah, I could see that. I just
Well, what do you think? Who do you think Rocky is? Where do you think Frank found him?
I'm assuming
Frank. Everybody there, the Transylvanians and all, they're from transsexual, but Rocky is obviously a creation of made out of spare parts. Now it could be Charles Atlas, as you were saying. I just was wondering if he just made him out of a potato or anything. It doesn't he didn't really need. He needed to use. And he was molded with sound. I mean, they keep talking about sonic transducers, and a sonic transducer is a record needle.
So.
So, basically, he was. I always pictured that he was carved with music.
Ooh. Well, I love that because you say carved. My other theory is that he's a Medusa'd Greek statue.
Oh, okay.
Of sorts.
Yeah, they de-Medusa-ized him, basically.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And if he's chiseled to perfection, if he's been carved to exactly Frank's specifications. And I'm also kind of basing this off of a shot we get of the David statue holding the speaker while Frank is
Right.
making his presentation. We see David's belly button, and then we kind of get a repeat shot of Rocky's torso and his
Lack of belly button.
strange belly button. Like, so he's not entirely human, at least. He doesn't have the same type of umbilical cord, I guess. But then it made me think that he might be a chiseled man that you just needed to stick in a tank of water and toss a hairdryer into the tank and get it reanimated.
Yeah, I would go with that. Yeah, but I always try to figure out what his the equipment is on the in the lab. The most noticeable ones when he talks about the sonic transducer will seduce you, and it's like I keep feeling that Frank has such a connection to music and dancing and like motion and things like that I have a feeling that he looks at the world in terms of music. Everything to him is a song. He lives in an opera.
Yeah.
Basically.
Oh, absolutely, he does.
And so the idea of carving the perfect man for him out of, like, as you were saying, carving him out of stone, or maybe they're just, as you were suggesting, that they were Greek, they like Michelangelo's David, that maybe this was a stolen statue that they came from the other planet to collect specimens. And maybe his only experience with an Earthling before that was Eddie.
Sure.
Sweet Eddie.
Yeah. So
he may have thought of Eddie as imperfect. He thought it might have been his dream, the dream human, but he wasn't. So he put him back in the freezer.
I have a kind of idea on why he keeps Eddie alive, maybe, or why he splits the brain instead of just doing a straight up brain transplant. That if I can assume that Eddie is maybe having the same bisexual questioning that Brad is experiencing, that Frank, who, as you said, has no experience with humans, if he thinks that, like, you have a gay side and a straight side, that he could split those elements of your sexuality and make a totally gay sex toy for him to use and abuse, and then to have Eddie so that, Columbia, who's the ultimate groupie, can still have a person to dance with at parties.
And ride on his motorcycle and things.
So I don't know. What do you think about that?
No, that's a really clever way of looking at it, of just trying to understand that these are, like, our assumptions are that Frank is acting with human emotions, but he's not. He's a child on this world. He doesn't understand why people react to him the way he does, simply because he acts on a totally different moral plane. He sees nothing wrong with, well, this didn't work out with Eddie, so, hacking him to death with an ice pick, so what? Or, or for that matter, kidnapping him, or for that matter,
cannibalizing him.
Yeah.
Right.
We just talked about in Sword of Damocles how the Transylvanians keep singing "That Ain't No Crime" over and over again.
Yeah.
Because we're assuming that on transsexual, it's not a crime. You can kidnap someone, you can, create a new human being, you can take somebody's brain out. It's not a crime.
Like, it's such a strange utopia that not only are they sexually uninhibited, but also all other societal norms have fallen to the wayside. And, like, as long as we're keeping a respectful opinion about this and we're, like, minding our business, it isn't a crime. We don't know that much. That's kind of the Transylvanians' perspective on Rocky pleading to them actively as he's like, let me out of here, please.
Yeah, no, and I mean, the only thing they're interested in is the transsexuals, the Transylvanians. They seem to be interested in the two things: is how humans interact on in social events, and time itself. They're interested in how time passes, how we see time passing. and of course the example I was about to use just dropped out of my head, but just discussing about doing the time warp, and but they don't quite understand that time, well, as as Riff says, time is fleeting, and they don't understand that they're not living, like they may have watched us in the past, and they thought, well, this is how people behave in social events, and so let's put it in this house, and we'll try to do it like humans do. And they come up with some interesting conventions on how to be human, but it's to the actual humans involved, namely Brad, Janet, and Dr. Scott. It's horrifying.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And to Rocky, and a little bit to Columbia, like, she's so doped that it takes her a while to realize and to kind of see the lack of humanity in the situation. But yeah, you're totally right on.
She was Eddie's groupie, but how do you feel was her relationship brought into with Columbia? How do you feel that the Magenta Columbia relationship? How
we're on other sides of the fence on this right now. I'm of the opinion that Columbia arrived at the castle at a different time, separate and unattached from Eddie, and that Eddie is the delivery boy of the heroin that the Transylvanians maybe need to exist on the planet Earth, a la Mars Attacks and that nitrous gum that they're chewing,
Yeah.
And I think that's why Columbia isn't immediately concerned with Rocky and kind of forgets Eddie exists until he shows back up. Like, oh, hey, the delivery boy's back. I love him. I wish he would sleep with me already, is like what Columbia's thing is.
And then my opinion is that Eddie and Columbia were a couple before getting to the castle. She tagged along in his delivery, and then they both got wrapped up and kind of seduced by Frank.
Mm-hmm.
And
maybe they also got stuck at the same dead-end sign that Brad and Janet got their flat tire at. And that's maybe Frankenfurter's trap that he lays.
That's his little Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah,
Right.
Exactly. That Eddie and Columbia were the Brad and Janet of the last iteration.
Like literally last weekend. Like 7 days ago, to be exact.
Oh, okay. Wow. That short of timeline, yeah.
And because you mentioned time fleeting.
But time means nothing, yeah.
Yeah. It blows my mind every time we think about it that the entire events of the movie transpire over the course of one night.
Yeah, a 24-hour situation. I mean, that's pretty much when I dealt with the Rocketeer. When you boil it all down, it's just a little bit over a day and a half, and it's like I thought it was
a couple of weeks going by. And it's like, wow.
Yeah, it's from I guess early morning in front of the church in Denton to the house leaving.
It can't be more than 24 hours.
It can't be, yeah.
I think it's from probably 3 p.m. until 6 a.m. the next day.
Okay, wow.
Like super short, like typical, you met someone at a bar for drinks, you went back to their apartment, and then woke up the next morning and did a walk of shame home.
Like that kind of is what the journey to the castle and then away from the castle, that's what that timeline is looking like for us.
And it's kind of the evening Brad and Janet set for themselves when they leave unprepared for a road trip,
Yeah.
Wow. I have to tell you, I live about 30 miles south of Denton, Texas.
Every time I go past the welcome to Denton sign, I keep thinking, why don't they have the home of happiness underneath?
Yeah.
Seriously.
Every Denton in America has a built-in branding that they can just attach themselves to. I don't know why they don't.
Oh, it's very frustrating. And there's even like a white clapboard church that I know
Oh
in
my
Denton.
gosh.
And it's like, oh, come on.
You guys are dropping the ball.
Yeah, this is like, you could have postcards. You could have like
Yeah.
a wedding factory there. It's
Prime photo location. Hey, any
Ah,
listeners in
it's very-
Texas that want to get married in Denton
very
in a
frustrating.
Rocky Horror theme?
Just
I
make
know,
it.
I know you've probably gone through this already on your show, but I haven't heard it, so let me ask: what were your first experiences with Rocky Horror? Where did you first see it? How did it first come into your life?
I watched it in my house with a friend of mine in high school, and my mom was not into the idea of any of it, but was allowing me to, have my fun until she turned it off at around the bedroom scene.
okay.
Catholic mom.
Yeah, Catholic mom. And I didn't see it again until a live shadowcast, I think, a year or two later. And Katie saw it when she was younger at a slumber party.
Yeah, I was about 12 years old. We had a triple
my.
feature that night. We did Rocky Horror, then we did Hedwig, and then we did Party Monster, the Michael
Where were
Ealing
your
story.
parents, bro?
Wow. Wow. I had my experience at the time, this was a movie and this was,
I feel like the old prospector out in the hills with a long, hey, well, Sonny, that's the way. But
we didn't have VCRs. It was before VCRs. It was before any of this. And I worked at the United Artists Cinema in Carmel, New York.
Yes.
And we had a show on a Friday. We watched it in the afternoon. The manager of the show said they're gonna have things. They're gonna be throwing things, and you need to watch the movie before we show the movie. So we watched it, and then we had a bunch of people come up from Manhattan. Carmel was about 60 miles north of Manhattan, and we had a bunch of people who were from the village who came up to like kind of kick things off, and they were handing out. And this was back in the days when you could bring in newspapers and Bic lighters. And we had, and the manager didn't know there was going to be open flame.
it's like, wait a minute.
So we had the second week that we had the show, it was no open flames, so people brought flashlights and things, but it was squirt guns and toast and toilet paper and
did you guys let rice happen? Because
we had rice,
confetti.
cards.
Oh, confetti, cards. At the time, this is how long ago this was. People would bring in computer punch cards. We lived in there were a lot of IBM facilities nearby. People would bring in punch cards for the Cards for Sorrow.
And Great Scott was always, at least 20 or 30 rolls.
Absolutely.
we no
Never-
longer do rice.
Oh, I was going to say we don't do toilet paper post pandemic times.
Oh
Because
yeah, that's like throwing
People-
away big coin.
yeah, they open their prop bag and they're like, great, I can use this at home.
We don't do rice anymore, though, because it gets soggy by the end of the night with all
Yes.
the drinks that are spilled and the water that's sprayed, and nobody wants to clean that up. So we're like, no rice. You can bring whatever else you want, just please no rice.
Yeah,
So-
it was.
I did, gosh, I want to say close to about 100 shows. I did about 100 shows, and I had to clean up at 2:20 in the morning. I would be going through, and we just pick up the big stuff
Yeah.
off the ground, like things that were, and then fortunately we didn't have any carpet. It was all cement, so we'd hose it down.
That's
And,
the way to do it. Just hose it
yeah.
down.
And then we'd have to scrub the seats and things the next morning. But it was,
Oh, boy.
And
What a
for one-
nightmare. How did-
and for what somebody brought in raisin toast once, and raisins are really hard to get off the floor.
Ugh.
They're like glue.
And you not only have experience with the midnight sensation Rocky Horror as a movie, but you also saw it as a stage show.
Yes,
Original.
and the West End in London.
This was back in July of it was August of 1978. August of 1978.
Wow.
I was over in London, and I had gone over with my folks. I was 18, but my folks had my mom worked for American Airlines, so we get tickets to go places, and we went to London, and they had gone out to another show with friends of theirs, and I thought, well, I'm in town, I should go see a show in the West End. And I went, and it was like, at the time, Annie was big, Evita. I can't remember some other shows there. So I thought, I'm never going to get tickets to this. And I go in, I'm like looking, Annie sold out, Evita sold out. I'm going down the list, and all of a sudden it says Rocky Horror. I was like, Rocky Horror's still playing here? Why? It's in the original theater?
Oh my gosh.
So I said, do you have any tickets to Rocky Horror? And the fellow opens his book and goes,
where do you want to sit? Like, really?
Oh my gosh!
I got 6th row center, and
wow.
But when I go to any movie, but my kids know this. Anybody that knows me, if you want to find me in the theater, I'm 6th row center. That's my spot.
It's a stupid OCD thing, but
no, it's your cemented place in every theater,
and that's perfect.
Yeah, no, I totally understand.
Yeah, it's where I want to be, and so if I can get 6th row center, and I was 6th row center in the theater, and they had it was amazing because it was it's an older theater, but they had wrapped up the entire inside of the building in burlap bags, or canvas bags, not burlap, but big canvas bags, and it said something like Acme Moving Company or something.
Sprayed on.
And it was all packed up like they were shipping the whole place to Transsexual, and the balcony was closed, and it had a big bag over the entire balcony. So you're sitting here, and you feel like you're in a packing crate. And then there's a
popcorn sales girl that comes down.
An usherette.
And she does the intro, and I had been working at the cinema, and I was like,
I know this whole play. And
there were more songs and things, but it was like the thing that always amazed me, and I know this is common knowledge now, but the thing that always amazed me was
that Dr. Scott and Eddie were the same person.
Yes.
And they just once Eddie gets killed, he goes to being Dr. Scott.
Yes.
And
it's so, I would have loved to have seen what it would have been like if either if Meatloaf had played Dr. Scott, that would have been amazing.
Well, he wanted to. He
Yeah,
really wanted to in the film.
Famously, quoted as being upset that they didn't double cast him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been so cool. But it was just such a, and the funny way they did it was he kills him inside of a Coca-Cola freezer. There's like a chest freezer that's up on a stand, and
Frank's hacking away at him. It's very loud. He's hacking away, and he stuffs him
into the Coca-Cola freezer, and his legs are hanging out the side. And then Dr. Scott appears,
and it's like you see the legs up there, and you go, "Wow, okay, there's Eddie still up there, and there's the same guy playing him." But it was just a clever little bit that I just.
But that's great that Frank leaves his legs out, and then. Dr. Scott is possibly paralyzed.
Exactly. That's what it's like, wait a minute.
Yeah. So do you think Dr. Scott can walk?
Yeah, I think it's he uses that to
get people off guard.
Yes.
As a power
agree.
tactic. Okay, that's interesting because
and he definitely has. I wonder if he was
visited earlier by Frank, like say 20 years earlier.
That's what we were thinking.
Because he's known as Dr. Fun Scott, and where did he get that nickname?
Yes, and they're so close to each other that it is a little serendipitous that one of them is observing the other.
Yes.
It's definitely the organization that Dr. Scott works for is either based in the middle of nowhere so they can see an open, clear view of the skies, or they already know an alien has planted right over there and we're going to closely observe them.
Or Frank landed his castle close to Dr. Scott because he was like, hey, it's a scientist from Earth, maybe I can learn stuff from him.
Yeah, my opinion is that they already have a history, because he gets he gets Frank to shut up as soon as he starts calling him fun skies. Oh, no, nothing about that, Brad. Just kidding.
So
yes. Yeah,
it's,
totally.
Okay. So, okay, are you saying that they had like an intimate relationship beforehand?
I think there was another, smoking on the side of the bed. The head door there.
Oh man, I love it.
And so he's kind of, Dr. Scott is almost the spurned lover.
Ooh, I like that.
I like that too. Because then why is Eddie there?
He's been rejected, and so now he's out to get Frank.
Ooh,
I love it.
I do too. I like this.
I have one more question about this stage show. Do you happen to remember anybody that was in it at the time? Because 78 sounds
or just
like...
what was the cast like? Like, what do you remember of the show?
I have the cast list, and I looked up some of them, and definitely they went nowhere.
Let's see. The usherette was played by Catherine Drew. Janet Weiss was played by Pippa Hardman, who was in a couple of, I think she was in Coronation Street and a couple of British soap operas. Narrator was Jeffrey Chiswick. Brad Majors was played by Frederick Marks, who was also in a bunch of like Doctor Who guest stars, single episode. Frankenfurter was played by a fellow named Larry Whitehouse, who
went nowhere.
Yeah, I don't recognize it.
And these were all. And Jim Sharman directed it. He was still directing at the time. Let's see.
Gosh, there's just
I know that in 78 he might not have been in London at the time, but Perry Bedden was playing Riff Raff. He might have been on tour. Maybe I know he went to like Germany and Australia and stuff, so he's probably on tour. But I was just kind of curious if you might have seen
Riff
Perry
Raff
Bedden.
was played by a fellow named David Glynn Rogers, and according to this, he found his theatrical bent with dancing with spring lambs on the Welsh hills.
All right.
Trying to see if he
doesn't say anything. He did The Sound of Music in Eastbourne, The Desert Song with John Harmon. Apparently, mostly just stage stuff. He never did. He never did any TV stuff, so he stayed on the stage.
All right.
Yeah.
So anyway, but a bunch of relative unknowns who didn't,
as far as I can tell, didn't do much afterwards. But I'm sure they had a good time while they were doing it.
Yeah. Like, what was the vibe like? Because
it was great. The interactions. Remember, this is after the movie came out, so some of the people knew the interactions, and there were a few cues that went through. They didn't do. Nobody was wearing newspapers over their heads or things like that. It wasn't that kind of participation. But as they were singing, the fellow that played Frankenfurter, who really played it, and he looked like Larry Wilcox from Chips.
He's a blonde Frankenfurter, if you can picture that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
he was singing "I Can Make You a Man," and he was getting down to the end of "Dig It If You Can," and somebody in the audience said, "I love you,"
and he turned around and he said, "I love you too, babe," and I kept going with the song, and it was like
everybody roared. It was just like, but it's so, and it was like with the usherette going up and down. She was handing out candy bars and things while she was talking, and it was very much hands-on. They were very close to the audience,
and a lot of interactions. A lot of
the Transylvanians, when they were doing the time warp, they came out into the audience and were doing it up and down the aisles, and there were some people that were getting up and dancing with them, but it really wasn't that way yet with that. So it was not as interactive, but it was very cozy, very intimate setting.
Mm-hmm.
And you felt like you were in a very off-Broadway production, even though it was there on the West End, and it had been a popular show for several years.
Mm-hmm.
So I really appreciated it. The band was fantastic. They
a live band, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, when you're having the drummer was at the front, basically the orchestra was facing backwards and the drums were up front, and the drummer was facing the stage, if I remember this correctly. But you were like, you could hear the drummer doing the beat, and they put a light on him when the song was playing. They bring up the lights toward the band.
I love that.
And the tenor sax that plays during during Eddie's song
Hot Patootie.
Hot Patootie. He had. I'm trying to figure out how to explain this on stage. There were two scaffolds on the left and right hand side of the stage, and on the scaffold on the left, at the top of it, that's where the Coke,
the chest freezer was at the top of that one.
And the tenor sax on the right side of the stage, the guy on the tenor sax
was climbing up the side, and he was playing the sax solo, hanging off. He was hanging off the scaffold on the right hand side, the big metal scaffold, and it was so in your face. It was so the music was such an active part.
Usually when you go to a play, and especially if you go to a Broadway play, you've got the orchestra pit, and you're not seeing any of the music up front. But here it was scattered through the whole thing, and it was just so raucous is the best description of it. But I had such a great time seeing this. And when I went back home, I back to my little theater in New York, and telling people I just saw this in London. It was great. Yeah. And they're like looking at me like, yeah, sure you went. Yeah, I went to London. You saw Rocky Horror. I'm like, no, really, it was great.
Well, what did you think about? So it was 3 years after the movie had come out, so already it was starting to pick up pace in.
Right now you have to understand that.
Okay, the movie came out in 75, and then in 76, 77, it was kind of percolating in the Village. It was in the Village, but it wasn't anywhere else. I was in the suburbs.
Okay.
But the spring and summer of 78, that's when it hit the suburbs everywhere. Everybody went to see it. They had heard about it.
Or they get dragged to it. It's like, you got to come and see this every weekend. You got to come.
Yeah.
And so in 78, it just kind of chugged along for a couple of years, but it wasn't really popular outside of the Village until about 78. Spring, summer 78, it hit big, and then you started seeing it in Time Magazine was mentioning the phenomenon of it. But you could go to other towns, you can go to St. Louis or Houston or anything like that, and all of a sudden it was everywhere, and people would go, and there'd be regional differences in what you did and what you said. One of the things that was big in New York, there's the scene
where Brad and Frank are smoking on the side of the bed, Brad.
And so while that's going on, there was a department store in the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut area, and it was known as Two Guys. Two Guys was the name of the store. It's like Target or Walmart, and it was called Two Guys.
Two Guys.
And
I like it.
Their logo, their catchphrase on all their commercials was "It's two guys, naturally." So when that's let's see what's on the TV, and they click to that scene, everybody yell, "It's two guys, naturally." So that and it's it wouldn't make sense nowadays because there is no more two guys, but it's
we need to bring it back.
In the New York metropolitan area, that was a very funny line.
I'm going to find that commercial on YouTube just so that I can post it and make everybody relive that so we can bring that callback back.
That is so good.
It's got to be out there somewhere, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm sure there will be, 10 years from now, people will be watching it and have HGTV lines or something.
My newest one is, it's funny you say HGTV because Betty Monroe is played by a host of an HGTV show called Love It or List It.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I want to make the callback, love it or okay guys, this is it.
Wow. Yeah. It's
just an idea.
I mean, we talked about how it kind of the dating of it by Nixon, but I think every generation will have its own. It has a timelessness that every generation can put their own stamp on it.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is the beauty of this show, and it's as we said earlier, it's lightning in a bottle. I don't think it could be constructed as much as it is a callback movie. I don't think you can construct something. It just has to happen, and that's what happened with this film.
Well, even if you look at, are you familiar with the Fox remake?
Yes.
Yeah, it too was trying to replicate something that it needed to be a capsule of an event in the 70s.
Yeah, you can't update. I mean, the worst thing you can do to it is update it. You
Yes.
can't update it. That's what happened at the time. You can't, and now, and you're watching it, you say to yourself, well, that's not Susan Sarandon. Well, that's
Yeah.
not, it doesn't, and how do you replace Tim Curry? How do you do,
don't.
you can't.
It's
And-
blasphemy.
Yeah, this is like redoing Wizard of Oz. You're really going to replace Wizard of Oz? You can't. It's
They'll never remake Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. They'll never, they tried to remake Mary Poppins and it was okay, but it's
Questionable.
It's not. I mean, some of the music I enjoy, but it's not. It's not Mary Poppins. They would have done better.
It's not
if
Julie
they just called it something
Andrews, is what it is. It's like
Yeah.
when you get such an iconic cast like Tim and Susan and Barry,
Yeah.
etc. Everybody is so, you couldn't recast any of them, and I don't like that they try, because you're totally right. The thing that keeps it relevant is the fact that young people continue to make it their church of sorts and keep finding their own ways to respond to these hymns.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
Yeah, no, it's the same liturgy. It's just different, it's an update. So, yeah, and I think that's where... By the way, have you seen Barry Bostwick's movie, The Selling, yet?
no.
Oh, you have... It's on, I think it's on Amazon. It's a Halloween movie.
Oh my gosh.
I'll give you the premise. I don't want to spoil anything.
Please.
But it's two realtors are trying to make money by, it's kind of like HGTV. They're trying to rehab
a haunted house. and Barry Bostwick plays Father Jimmy, who's a guy they hired to exorcise the ghosts that are in the house. But
I love him so much.
He's only in it for maybe 20 minutes of the whole thing, but it's
worth it.
It's very worth watching.
Yeah, 100%.
Have you seen FDR American Badass?
Yes. Yeah, he is. Barry Bostwick is a national treasure.
Honestly,
A
I love him
treasure.
so much.
Oh.
You can't get enough of it. It's like seeing Bill Murray in a movie. You see yourself, okay, even if it's a bad movie, it's going to be an okay film if you see Barry Bostwick in it.
Exactly.
Oh yeah. So we had a ultimate question for you that
Okay.
hopefully the conversation has let you ruminate on it a little bit. What do you think the ultimate meaning of Rocky Horror is?
The ultimate meaning of Rocky Horror.
What it could mean, it could be what it means to you. It could be what you think it means to pop culture, to society, to the world, to Transylvanians.
I think.
Yeah, I think it is a capsule of what it's like being a teenager on Saturday night. You go to the movies and you escape into a world, an amazing world that's full of, Anne Francis and giant ants and triffids and all these monstrous things. And you come out on the other side and you feel like you just went on a roller coaster ride. You had this experience. Maybe you fell in love. Maybe you took the girl of your dreams to the movies and you both experienced something where she'd scream and you'd give her a hug, and
you lean in
you
close.
scream and she'd give you a hug. And,
Yeah.
This, to me, Rocky Horror is being a teenager on a Saturday night, and you're going to the movies, and you're gonna have a good time, and it's full of music and adventure and romance, and comedy, and just the world is a very silly place. And the more serious it gets, as Charles Gray is telling you these things in all seriousness, and you're yelling back at the screen at him, that's your chance to be in charge of your life for a little bit and watch other people having disasters. I think that's to me, it's Saturday night when Eddie asks whatever happened to Saturday night. That's what happened on Saturday night. That's the Saturday night that you lived.
Yeah. Oh. What a poetic answer.
I love that.
Yeah, I love that.
Well, Jim, thank you so much for taking this time to talk to us. And we wanted to give you this chance to plug your shows.
Yes, any social media episodes you want us to listen to.
I appreciate that. If you'd like to listen to something, if you want to binge one of my favorite two shows actually are the Rocketeer Minute and the Apollo 13 Minute. Rocketeer Minute I'm especially proud of because 9 episodes in we were sending these things out not knowing if anybody was listening to them, and we got a tweet saying, "I'm listening to this over my oatmeal. Would love to be on your show. How can I help?" Signed, Billy Campbell, the Rocketeer.
Oh my gosh!
Oh wow!
And
He was on for 40 episodes. We had him on for 40 episodes. He's
my
on about
gosh.
2 or 3 times a week, and I have a good friend now with the Rocketeer, and
Can you
through
believe
him
that?
we met so many people. Laura Hardin, who's on The Office.
Yes.
She was a South Seas singer, and she came on for 2 shows. We talked about she was 19 years old when she made this movie. She and Jennifer Connelly were the only 2 girls on the show, and they would get backstage and talk about the show and what it was like being in the movies. And as we finished the whole series, Joe Johnston, the director, the man who invented Yoda, the man who came up with the design of Yoda and built the Millennium Falcon, and directed Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. And here he is showing up on our show saying that the most fun he ever had was making the Rocketeer, and he stayed with us for 3 episodes talking about his movie and how much he loved making this. That was really my life-changing podcast. I couldn't believe it went as good as it did.
Yes. Oh man.
So it was exciting. You can find that at rocketeerminute.com. It's also available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or Spotify, or TuneIn. The other one I want to mention, I'm sorry, I don't want to drag too long.
No,
but,
you're totally okay.
If you like the Rocketeer and you want some more real life stuff, I did with my good friend Chris Henry. We did the Apollo 13 Minute, and although we are going to have him on later on. We didn't have any of the actual crew of Apollo 13, but we did manage to have a man who went to the other side of the moon, astronaut Frank Borman, came on the show. He was the commander of Apollo 8, a man who took that picture that you always see of Earthrise. And I got to meet him personally up in Wisconsin. My co-host he runs the museum at the Experimental Aircraft Association in Oshkosh, and he invited me up to meet with Frank, and I got to drive Frank to lunch in my car. So my co-pilot was an Apollo astronaut.
Oh my gosh!
Wow.
I wanted to get the seat bronze, but we had him on. We had so many people from those days that they were in the movie, and there were people that actually put men on the moon on our show. They're all in their 80s and 90s now, but they were we were fortunate enough to be able to have them come on the show and talk about
incredible.
the real life experience of Apollo 13. So if you get a chance, that's at apollo13minute.com, apollo13minute.com. You can find them at Spotify, TuneIn, Apple Podcasts, and Google Play. But if you need to find any of my stuff, I have got a big site, jimokane.com, JIMOKANE.com. You can go to all my all my experiments in trying to entertain people, but that's out there. And I do really appreciate you having me on the show. Rocky Horror is really one of my favorite movies. It brings back a good piece of my young adulthood, and I'm always happy to talk about it.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to Saturday night, right?
Exactly. Well, it lives on, and it's available on DVDs now. And,
Yes.
and streaming, so.
Thank you so much, Jim.
Thank you, and I hope your show does well. It's a great concept, and I hope it goes on may you have it for a long time.
Thanks again to Jim for being an amazing guest, and check out his website, jimokane.com, to see all his projects and podcasts. And thank you for tuning in to this special presentation. And don't forget, on Wednesdays we watch Rocky. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. It really helps us out, and we appreciate all your feedback. We'll see you next time.